discussion? Actually, quite a bit of discussion on the fact about the electronic voting and its ineffectiveness for anybody watching online, or to notice whether or not who's voting for what and how things have gone. So we have decided amongst us that we should go back to the old style, and we will now vote by hand, even though it is possible to put up the who voted for what on the screen, but people watching won't be able to get that. So we will go back to the old style voting. Okay? So thank you. And let's move on to any amendments or deletions of the agenda.
I have 3 amendments. K2, Shell Gas Tax Relief Initiative. M1, Nobleford and District Emergency Service Award Event. M2, Nika Yuko Japanese Winter Light Festival Opening Night Invitation.
Are there any other additions or deletions? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve? Ken? Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting of November the 7th. Are there any errors or omissions of the minutes? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the minutes of November 7th council meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And let's move down into let's see, let's do the different conference. Morning, Matt. Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
So Lethbridge College's 21st Annual Tiffin Conference will take place on Thursday, January 16th, 2020 at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge. The Tiffin Conference is an event held to discuss current issues and trends in the red meat industry. Lethbridge County has supported this event for the past 13 years through sponsorship and attendance. Lethbridge County is providing a $1,000 sponsorship this year. Just an edit to the agenda report. It says here that ticket prices have not yet been announced. I just checked this morning. Tickets are $110 again this year. One other note, this event is the same day as the January 16th scheduled council meeting. However, there is an agenda report coming to council later today to potentially change the January 16th meeting to the 15th, so there would no longer be a scheduling conflict there if that was approved. So the recommendation that I'm bringing forward is that any member of council wishing to attend the Tiffin Conference scheduled for January 16, 2020 at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge be authorized to do so.
Thank you. Is there any questions about that? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm good with the sponsorship of the event. The council attending the event, I'm not quite in favor of. There's dozens of ag-related conferences all winter, and to pick one or two to attend doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. They're more directed to the ag producers rather than councils, I think. So I wouldn't be in favor of it.
Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was there, I've been there for a couple of years now, and I really feel the necessity that we do show our faces there, because I think that, you know, they kind of expect the county to be there, and the majority of our ratepayers are the ag sector, and since we sponsor, I think it's really important that we are there. And I was there last year, and, you know, we had very, very good speakers, and I thought it was well worthwhile.
Yeah, Ken?
The fitness conferences leans to the cattle industry more than like agriculture and stuff like that. And they have all people that deal in where it's going and stuff. Thank you. And that's the part that I've noticed, and that's a lot of good information for anybody that's running cattle or whatever.
Well, at one time they had both, but they didn't have enough of attendance, I don't think, they felt on the other side to do it. So, anybody else's thoughts? I would kind of have a tendency to agree with Steve, but if you're in the business, you probably should go. Go ahead, Ross.
I think that probably is the difference with the people. Like, if you are in the industry, that like you said, it makes a lot more sense to be there. So, do we want to limit it to a few going instead of all, or just another option?
It's kind of up to you guys. I would probably think that if you limited it to a couple, that would be fine. Otherwise, it is on a council day, we don't have to change the date then. So everybody speak up at once. Ross?
Since I think that we should be there, I will make a motion that we reschedule our meeting for.
We could deal with that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that anybody who wants to go to the TIFA conference is allowed to do so.
Anyone? Ross? Any further discussion on that? I'll call the question then. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Let's do quickly the Bank of Montreal Banner and Family Award. It's always been a very popular thing for the county, and I think it's a good thing to recognize people in the industry. Gary?
So if we move on to the 2020 Bank of Montreal Calgary Stampede Farm Family Awards, this is something that we do, of course, every year, and we've had some very good people represent Lethbridge County for this award. The list of awards, the people that have received the awards is there. That's important to note, of course, when we're nominating new people. The background information here is important to note the criteria. So the Calgary Stampede, they invite all the South ASBs basically to nominate a family involved in the agri-food industry. That's changed over the last few years. They didn't want guys that were producing food. Now they've changed the criteria. So if there's any discrepancy or any questions on that, I can ask the Stampede for that. So if we move back to the recommendation here, it's that County Council nominate 3 farm families in order of preference to be contacted by myself for the 2020 Bank of Montreal Farm Family Award. And when we do this, we should probably go into camera so we can discuss which farmers we'd like to nominate or our top 3 preference.
So just a question to you before you you can consider that as, did we not also have a list of names from before that, were on the radar?
I do have the two that weren't selected last year here.
Okay. Claus?
Yeah, thank you. Do you also have a list of the people that have had the awards?
Yeah, the list is actually, on the page there. Yeah.
Sorry.
So last year, was the Dave Bishop family, and then there's a list of ones that we've had in the past. And the folks that have been nominated and accepted, this is a very, good experience for them. They go up to the Stampede, and there's a brunch which they recognize all the families from southern Alberta. And, they all come away really glowing from the experience they have, and I know some of council have gone up on that day as well. It's a good deal to it shows some of our good producers out there, and that list you can see is a fine list of people that represented our county.
They also get a plaque to put in their cage or wherever they wanna put it, above the state, Bank of Montreal.
Yes, they do, and so this one is for the south and the Northlands in Edmonton. They do it up there as well for the northern part of the province.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we go in camera then to discuss the families.
All in favor?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as described, this parcel by the Swamps, they're subdividing out the existing farmyard that's there. The first parcel of the subdivision, there's an established residence there. As you can see in the air photo, quite a bit of tree shelter belt, some grain bins, and some other improvements in there. As you'll notice in your package of the illustration of the subdivision, the parcel that they've applied for is a bit of a odd configuration. They're trying to take, as you can see in the air photo there, the irrigation, there's a pivot on the land. Mr. Slomp, besides the main yard, which is quite developed for some future room for expansion, and some plans to put some buildings or shop buildings such on there. He wants, instead of going into the irrigated area and the pivot, he's applied to go to the west into that area where the pivot doesn't cover, right back there. So that accounts for a bit of the odd shape. One of the things as well is there's a LNID pipeline right away that runs through the back of his yard, which is kind of that patchy area there, which goes north-south. And that's a 30-meter pipeline right away, which he's not allowed to build or put any improvements over top of that. So that is kind of the reason why he's applied for the parcel in the fashion he has. So he's got room in the back off the pipeline in order to add future improvements back there, and not take any of the irrigated land out from under the pivot system. So the yard, the current yard does have a septic system in place that will be part of the parcel. He's on the rural water co-op there. As part of the review, there's no abandoned gas wells in the area that would affect it. The closest CFO is over 1.5 kilometers away. He well exceeds any MVS that would be applicable. As part of this application, his quarter section himself is not flagged for historic resources, but the quarter section to the south is. Just because of that, he has to get historical resource clearance from the province because he's adjacent to a designated historic resource. It was circulated to Alberta Culture, but we haven't heard any comments back yet. Often on the ones adjacent to, we often don't receive the referrals back on those. But if he was to disturb or do something on his own land, then he has to get clearance for that. And it is noted as well, this parcel is just outside the IDP boundary with town of Picture Buttes, that's not applicable. So with that, It is the first parcel of the subdivision. He does meet all the subdivision criteria in regards to a single subdivision out of the core section and for servicing and access and all those types of things. During the referral process, there was no objections or concerns received by anybody. LNID did respond to the application. They have no concerns, but as noted, they do have that 30-meter pipeline right away over top there. In addition to the right of way, LNID always requests a further 50-foot setback for any buildings as well. That's not enforceable, but it is something that they desire to see from their infrastructure. So I guess the main determination is it does meet all the criteria. Just I guess one of the things subdivision authority, if you're comfortable enough for see merit in his proposal to go to the way it's configured. The yard itself to the west of the pipeline is roughly about 4 acres inside for the existing developed yard there with the trees and that sort of a thing. And then the extra undeveloped land that he wants to expand on in the future is about extra 5 acres for that, whatever. And that results in that 9.91 acre size. So on that basis and on the circulation, with no concerns, I have put a recommendation of approval in front of you with the conditions of property taxes paid and up to date, a development agreement entered into if required, the final plan of survey submitted, that he confirms historical resource clearance with us, and that any easements as required by utility companies be established. Since the package came out to you, we have heard from ATCO Gas and ATCO Pipelines, and they did indicate they have no needs or no concerns with anything.
Any questions? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a plan to develop on that extra piece, that kind of pie-shaped piece?
Yeah, Mr. Slump indicated that the reason he wants extra land is because it's not an irrigation and dry whatever, and for some future plans to expand the yard a little bit, or perhaps add to the shop building and such, he'd rather push it to the west into that unused pour area than to go into his pivot area, so.
That area to the south of the yard, is that, I mean, that's not farmable either. Is that kind of appropriate for development like that also, or?
I guess that's a bit of a low area, it's not as good a land or something like that.
Okay.
When he can, he irrigates into that as far as he can. So he said the land to the east in behind is flatter, better land to build on, and it's dry or whatever, so that was his preference, I guess, or knowing the land, he said that was a better spot.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So that configuration is basically set up for the irrigation. Like it looks like where it's at, it could take the one side, it goes straight down, and then assume just the other side is the same thing.
Go ahead, Roy.
So, Mr. Chairman, so from the ortho photo, it's a little bit harder to see in your agenda package. It's clearer on the aerial image that we have here. So they would want to cut across here, so the kind of the straight line going to encompassing that yard, and then going up slightly like this.
Yeah.
So taking up this, gently this portion of that dry, unirrigated land, so that they can use it for future outbuildings, accessory buildings for their property.
Ross?
I am familiar with the property here. To the south of the the yard there, so that is not included in the?
No.
Oh, that is not, because that is, yeah,
No,
like,
this part isn't
like you said,
included.
that is not really farmable land either.
Well, that's, and I think because of it is a low area, like Steve
Yeah.
suggested, that it's not really a building site, so it's probably just best left with the farmland.
So just to, when you look at the map, So they're taking part of the irrigated land away to make the acreage, right?
No, I don't believe that they are taking any, that's why I say it's easier to see on this aerial photo. You can see where the dry spots are, where the irrigation doesn't hit. The map that Steve probably uses from when there was probably a wet year, and things were growing a lot better. This is from 2018, so you can see that for the most part, that irrigation pivot only goes at that diagonal, so doesn't.
So this map in here with the hatches on it is not quite accurate.
I think it is accurate, it's just that it's showing darker green underneath.
There's a different photo here.
It's a different photo underneath this, the one in your agenda package to the one that we have in our geographic information system.
Oh,
That's why.
but it looks like,
Yeah.
The north, that angled north line of the yard basically follows where the pivot arm ends, or whatever, it's the angle.
Yeah, it follows this line here.
so you're not going north of that?
No,
Oh, because in this photo, it looks
it
like
does look, yeah,
you're way out of whack there.
yeah.
Okay.
And just clarification, maybe that some of you will recognize if you say the former owner was Evertans.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Go ahead, Klaus.
I'll move that the application be approved subject to the condition of my.
Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, let's move on to subdivision 2019-0-155. And this is in the hamlet of Turin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is an application that was initiated in-house. Steve Hardy and I worked on the subdivision design for this particular area because it's the former CP Rail Yards station lands for Turin. So the county has had these, we've owned these lands for, I think, about since 2011, so about 8 years. So we thought it was about time maybe we do something with it. So what we proposed is that we would create 8 new lots with one residual parcel that would be adjacent to the highway, and that these would be used for hamlet industrial uses, so creating some opportunities, in-house opportunities for industrial development in our hamlet. So working with our industrial commercial land use strategy and trying to generate some activity in our hamlets. So the one thing to note on this application is that you'll see that the road isn't in the right of way. So we're going to rectify that problem. We're going to create a new right of way where the existing road is. And we will probably, we'll come back and close and consolidate where the former road was to kind of clean that up. And that was discussed with the Municipal Services Department, and they were agreeable to that. The other,
So can I, before you leave that?
Yep.
So does that mean the property you're going to consolidate is in the new subdivisions, or is it in?
the old right of way will be consolidated into the existing, like, so where the community hall is,
Yeah,
there's a road right of way, the road doesn't go actually in the right of way, it's to the north of the right of way. So we are kind of swapping land, creating a new right of way and closing an old right of way.
so like, I guess, I'm not quite, so you're
Okay.
giving the land that was in the right over to somebody else, or is that
We will
going
be
to the
selling
new
it.
lots? You're
We'll sell it to them.
gonna sell it?
Yes,
But they would have to buy it from Smara,
yes.
correct?
Yeah, that'll be coming, if this application is approved, then we'll work on that road closure application, yeah. So you can see, the white lines delineate property lines, so that's, you can see where the right of way should have gone straight. It does this nice little jog, and instead of creating the road, a new roadway, which at great cost, we decided that just exchanging the right of ways would work well, so. And, so is that clarified?
Yeah, it's just, so, I guess if they don't wanna buy it, what happens?
It'll just stay as a county-owned parcel,
Oh.
but I have talked to the landowners and they've all been agreeable to purchasing it. Yeah, no, it's,
Okay.
we discussed it beforehand, so.
Good enough, thank you.
The other, portion to note is that if the subdivision is successful, that we will be looking at coming back in the new year with a rezoning application to rezone the lands to industrial and to also, make the hamlet boundary encompass those parcels. So there's a few other steps that we'll have to do to get this all finalized, but this is step one, getting the subdivision done so that we can start, putting some lots up for sale. With that, Steve will go through the other planning comments that, we have for this
I've
application.
got one, okay, Ken?
Yeah, so is it there, water to that or just dry?
No, there are some, I think there's 3 water steps to this parcel right now. And there is the ability to expand both the water and the sewer system in turn to service all of the lots. So that's one of the benefits of this particular location.
Okay. Thank you. Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In turn, do they have pressurized water system?
Yes. They do.
Wow,
Septic fields do in turn, or?
No, they have a wastewater
They
system.
got a wastewater?
There's lagoons in for turn.
Oh, okay, didn't know that.
Yes. The only hamlets that don't have wastewater are Chin and Iron Springs.
Okay, thank you.
And Kent, I guess.
okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so as explained, Mr. Chair, this application is to create 8 new lots and 1 residual parcel. There'll be 1 parcel be left in the county's name, just at the entrance to Turin, wherever there Hillary's showing with her hand. And the reason for that is just the way the CPR line and the station grounds, with the track there crossing, that kind of orphan piece there. It's not developable from the sense, with Highway 25 there and the setbacks required. Somebody couldn't purchase that, put a building on it because they'd be too close to the highway. And because it's tucked in behind those other residential lots there at the north end, it doesn't really make sense to tie it over further to the east and have kind of a sliver in behind. So the idea is that the county will just retain ownership for that. These conceivable here for the interim, but, and, you know, whether that area is used for, some enhancements into the village of Turin or signage or on the plan it'll say roadway for that, so then it automatically becomes the county. That way all the lots will have access off of that new roadway, which is the existing station grounds access, which has been there for many years. As this land is adjacent to Highway 25, one of the things we tried to do with the lots was make them wide enough and such so that the setbacks from the highway, because part of the north portion of the lots won't be developable because of the highway setback, so the size and orientation of the lots will allow enough of building footprint on the southern portion to put buildings and such on. As part of the referral application, it was circulated to Alberta Transportation, and they have no concerns or objections to the subdivision, so they gave their approval of that. One of the things to note, it doesn't affect the subdivision, but maybe the future sale of the lots is that when Lethbridge County back in 2011 purchased the land from the CPR, there was, that the county had as part of that agreement done, environmental assessment done on it. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. So that report did find that there was a presence of a little bit of hydrocarbons on the station ground site. So for industrial use, it's not really an issue for using from a foreign industrial use for industrial activity again. If it was to be used for something else, let's say, you know, a school or residential use or something like that, then likely, you know, due diligence would need to be done and need to further testing or likely some soil reclamation done on there to remove those hydrocarbons and that sort of thing. But But for industrial use, it's like, it's not really an issue, but one of the things the county should do is just work with your lawyer in future sales agreements, and just note that in the sales agreement, so that the buyer's aware or whatever of that, and that study that was done previously. But the purpose is that this is gonna be for industrial use. So with that, as Hillary mentioned, you can see there, part of the land is in the hamlet and part of it is outside the hamlet, just by the nature of the CPR line coming in, and the way the distribution grounds work. So some of that east portion, in the future, you'll see come back to you, a rezoning for that, and just a realignment of the hamlet boundary to encompass these lands totally, so they're all within the hamlet. So with that, as Hillary mentioned, with servicing, there's the availability of the water and sewer in the hamlet. So that is a benefit of these lots for potential purchasers, that they can actually be on a municipal system. And use the county to have flexibility whether you pre-service them, and do that in the price, or you charge less like people hook in. That'll be something administratively here that you can determine, but there's availability of servicing on these. So as part of the circulation, there was no objections or concerns received. I did have just one phone call in relation to the road and just clarification on, as the earlier discussion was here about the road, if it was going to be relocated and closed and that sort of thing. But other than that, there was no other concerns or objections on this. Some of the utility companies have asked to go into a shared general utility right away, which would be in the county's name, so ATCO Gas and Talis and that sort of thing can be a party to that. So since this is a county-owned land and a county's own subdivision application, I have recommended approval to you. It does meet your bylaw in regards to industrial lots. It does meet your industrial land use strategy, and also some of the recommendations that were in your hamlet and Turin growth study. And approval can be done with just two conditions, and that's that the final plan of survey be submitted, and that the utility right-of-way, as determined necessary by Lethbridge County, be registered in conjunction with the subdivision as well. I will note that for municipal reserve, municipalities themselves are not exempt from municipal reserve provisions. There's only 4 exemptions, and municipality is not one of them. But I did note here, just under informative A, that applicable reserve may be addressed as determined by the municipality, because it is your land, you are the overseer of MR. So how you want to address that, or in the future, municipality often does improvements in the hamlet, or park space, or playground, that sort of thing. So there's no specific MR recommendation on here, because it is your land, you are the authority over it, and you also deal with recreation like that, so you can manage that how you feel is appropriate. Unlike with private landowners' land, where they subdivide, you only have that one chance to deal with them at the time of their approval. So once they get their title, they can do with their land with what they want. So with that, I have recommended approval to you, with just those 2 conditions.
Any questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that one parcel couldn't really build on the remnant parcel because of the highway right-of-way. How far does the highway right-of-way kind of go into the proposed lots?
So the right-of-way is the white line here. It's just the setback to the highway. It's 40 meters. So it's quite a distance in, and it can be waived, depending on what somebody would want to do. It's mostly for a building, but if somebody were to purchase this lot and say want to have, say equipment sales or something, they could store equipment in that required setback. So it's not totally unusable, but it just means that the buildings themselves, the occupancy buildings, have to be set back that distance. So they'll have, the southern portion of those lots will be like where these houses are in this building here, those meet those setbacks, so we have lots of space to work with.
So then down to lots 4 to 8, when there's the proposed roadway, is there still enough building area in there to,
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah, they,
both, for both setbacks?
yes, they do, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I have two, so, I can't remember, when you take reserve, you take it at the time of subdivision or the time of sale?
Time of subdivision.
Subdivision.
Yeah.
And the other one was the hydrocarbons you mentioned. Is that caveated to the title and so everybody knows, or is it just something you disclose if somebody was interested in it, or how
So
does
that
that
would,
work?
it's not on the title, Mr. Chairman, it is something that, as Steve mentioned, we would probably disclose as the sale of the lands. As Steve mentioned, when it's industrial purposes, there's no concerns, it's when you have an occupancy, so say where, if you had a restaurant, a school, a house, where they would have to actually remediate the soils of those hydrocarbons, but for industrial uses where people are living on the property, or making food or processing food, that we would, that it's, there's really no issues, so. But it's something that we would in the sale, when we're selling the land, that we would put that in our sales, agreement, we make sure that that's disclosed, that there was some phase 1 and 2 assessments completed, and that these were the results.
So if you had an office and you had people in there for 7.5 or 8 hours a day, that's okay?
I think that's fine, yeah.
Okay, Klaus?
Talking about those carbons in the soil, that would be created through the CPR at the time, right?
Yeah.
So that, with other words, that would probably not be very deep in the ground. Would it?
Not likely, it's not like there is a gas station on the site where you would have tanks that were underground, coming from like the iron filings, coming off of the rail line, possibly, you know, spillage of some materials here and there, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, when the county bought that entire from Turin all the way through to Shaughnessy, Secret Rail Line, there was all along, I can't remember how many miles there was soil samples done. So generally what that study found was, on the rail itself, there wasn't really any found, there was very trace amounts of that, but it was just that the sidings that turn in Iron Springs, and largely because it's a siding and sometimes they're parked there, sitting for a while, that sort of thing, or if you had oil dripping or whatever, that there's a little bit more found at the siding part because of that, but it wasn't a significant amount. At the time, they felt that they need to go beyond the phase 2, because they didn't go to the phase 3 level. If something significant, then a phase 3 investigation kicks in. That wasn't done. The report basically says it was minor trace amounts type of thing, so like I say, for industrial uses, might not be an issue for using that, but I say it's just one of those things just similar with Iron Springs, you just disclose it in the sale to somebody, and if you want to investigate further, there's an option to do that, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county water line that comes from the city, that goes through the CPR, the farmer right away. Turin is the end of the line.
That's right.
So, and then, so it's not under these proposed lots either, is it?
I would have to check, but if it follows like where the one in, Iron Springs, and it went alongside the rail line in this area here, but I'm not, I don't have the utilities on here, but I think all the water is on the south, in the road right of way.
Okay.
Because I know there's 3 services in this lot, so, and I know they're all along the road right of way, so I think maybe it switched down to the road instead of going along the rail line, in this case, yeah.
Okay.
So didn't that water line only come up to where the old treatment plant was? And then it was distributed? from
Yeah,
there?
there's
Internally.
So
distribution
it just
lines.
followed the same?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Need a motion there? Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the recommendation as outlined.
Any further discussion? Call question, those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it branched out from there, so I don't know whether it went through the majors of town or not. I don't know.
where it is in this area. Sorry, it's not on top. Great, you know. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Silver.
I'm just waiting to see what you're gonna do next.
Oh, we'll do the, sorry, I was gonna say that, we'll do, the management and environmental municipal reserve report.
And I will move. Alright, so with regards to, the agenda item for policies 179, which is the management of the Lethbridge County Environmental and Municipal Reserve Policy. Over the last number of years, I have noted that we take municipal reserve or environmental reserve, but we really haven't had any guiding documentation other than what's in the Municipal Government Act for why we do it, how we do it, if we can dispose of it, and maybe some management aspects of those lands. Right now, we just take them and they kind of get forgotten. And then every once in a while, some people call and say there's people dirt biking in a county-owned parcel, and it's like, okay. So here we are today. This was an initiative that I thought was important just in terms of moving forward, making sure that we are managing our lands appropriately. So we have obtained lands designated as environmental or municipal reserve through various subdivisions, as mentioned in our last subdivision application. In the past, there has been no oversight with regards to the management of these important properties in the county. So under the Municipal Government Act, we may request that a landowner who is subdividing land set aside a portion of their lands for municipal or environmental reserve. Municipal reserves are lands that are required for the municipality for such things as parks, recreation purposes. Environmental reserves are generally to remain in their natural state and are important to providing public access to water bodies and water courses, or just protecting the lands in general. All reserve lands are owned and managed by the municipality. So this draft policy provides county council and administration with clear direction on what constitutes either a municipal or environmental reserve, the disposal of reserve lands, when municipal or environmental reserve lands are required, and the management of those lands going forward. So I did write in detail. I thought if you had a chance to review what the policy was, it's a little long. But there are some important components to it. It's split into, I thought, kind of logical sections as to how to deal with how we dedicate it, how we dispose of it, and then how we manage it going forward. Some financial impacts would be initially with some costs related to putting up some signage for existing reserve sites, maintenance and other required maintenance for existing reserve lands. We do this, I know that with our parks, we already do maintain them, so that's not an additional cost, that's a cost that's already in our service area does all of the maintenance on our parks. And we already monitor the lands, we just need just a little bit more oversight in terms of making sure that we know where they are, what they are, making sure that people recognize the importance of these lands and that they are accessible to the public, but we want to make sure that there's no off-site off-road vehicles driving through them, like ATVs or dirt bikes, that they're there for the public's enjoyment, for everybody. So with this policy, the approval of this type of policy, this would provide the county council administration and the general public with clear guidance with regards to the management of these sites in our county. So right now, people don't even know really what they are, what they're for, so this would give us the mechanism to move forward with that. Any questions of council on the policy itself?
So it's just, how do you kind of, is a municipal reserve also considered an environmental reserve? Like, because I'm reading the two of them and I'm not kind of clear, because in one you can lease it, and the other one you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And one if you lease it, you can use it for certain things, but it sounded like you could almost use motorized vehicles if you were leasing it for some reasons, like for recreational or something like that.
I will explain.
Okay, thank you.
So a lot of this is already under the Municipal Government Act in terms of how these types of, different types of lands can be used. So municipal reserve is your parks and recreation. So that's where you would have the opportunity to say have trails for motorized vehicles. In certain municipalities, they might want to do that. Environmental reserve is supposed to be left in a natural state. So it's not, you're not supposed to really have anything in there. You could build like a walking path, but you don't want to have motorized vehicles from there disturbing the natural, say the coulees in the county. So the difference is one is a more active recreational space and one is a more passive recreational space. Usually with environmental reserve, you're taking that so that you're protecting that particular, maybe it's an environmentally significant area like a coulee, maybe it's next to a water body, maybe it has some, endangered habitats on it, maybe it's got a hibernaculum on it or something that, you want to protect those rattlesnakes. But those are things where environmental reserve kind of fits in, and then the municipal reserve is like our hamlet parks would be a good example of a municipal reserve space that is meant for more active recreation. So that's, I hope that kind of clarifies the difference between the two.
Yeah.
But there are definitely some similarities in terms of how the policy is written.
Any other questions? Bob?
So, thank you very much. When you're subdividing land, how much do you take if you're?
If we were, Mr. Chairman, through to Councilor Horvath, if we were taking actual land from municipal reserve, you can take up to 10%. Now, as you probably noted in most of our subdivision applications, we don't take land generally speaking. We take cash in lieu because we don't have a large need for recreational spaces, say in a country residential subdivision where people have 2-acre parcels. You don't always need a park space to complement that. So we take the cash in lieu more often than not. Where we would take municipal reserve as land would probably be in a hamlet. So if we're doing a hamlet expansion, say if we're doing one in Chin one day, we're expanding the hamlet, we would probably take some of the land as park space, and that can be up to 10%. And then environmental reserve is wide open. You can take as much environmental reserve as needed for the area that you're looking to protect. So like say a coulee area could be, 50 acres, potentially, depending on what it is. Deer Run Estates, we have a very large environmental reserve site. If you're familiar with Deer Run, there's kind of the split when you go through the draw. Either side of that roadway is environmental reserve, and I do believe that's probably around, I want to guess about 20 acres. So for environmental reserve, it's a lot more, you can be more broad because it's a different entity.
And so is this under a second subdivision, do you get that land, or is it first subdivision, or what is?
First parcel out of a quarter section, you don't take municipal
Okay.
reserve in cash or for land. It's when you're doing like multi-unit subdivisions that you do that.
Multi-unit?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
The only other thing I wanted to point out is that we have 13 sites in the county. So that's not a whole lot, but in the future we might be getting more, just depending on where country residential developments go along coulee edges, getting that environmental reserve, which is kind of more the angle that I was going at. And then also with our, maybe the expansion of hamlets going into the next number of years. So I have a list, and Mike Bly did create a map layer for me to show me where all of these sites are. So we do have we've already built the inventory, we know where they're at. So we're just gonna keep adding to that if this policy is approved.
Go ahead, Ann.
How does this fit in with the group country residential study survey?
It doesn't, for most group country residential developments, we haven't been generally taking municipal reserve, but it is something that we can consider, to add it to maybe a community building. That's another use for municipal reserve, or maybe the community, that developer would want to have, say, a more congregational active park space for people to gather to, so that will fit into that somewhat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if he was subdividing, do you take a specific spot? Is it up to you guys to decide on that land where you want that reserved?
So that would happen when they're doing an area structure plan, they would identify where the ideal spot for a park space, or community space would be. So it would be identified well before the subdivision was coming, so that you know that it's usually in, like, say in Sunset Acres, that park space that we have in Sunset Acres is a municipal reserve site, and it's central to the community, there's pathways that lead to that park, so that's something that would happen at that, initial phase, and it would be a discussion between the county and the developer.
Okay, thank you.
So then, Hillary, in Moon River Estates, those trails that got in the coulees, are they reserved? Are they just,
Moon River,
isn't that the one over by the research station?
Mountain
Oh,
Meadows.
Mountain Meadows.
Sorry, like Moon River's in a different municipality.
Yeah, sorry, wrong municipality. Okay, we don't want that one. The other one.
So, Mountain Meadows is, yeah, those, trails are actually municipal reserve, yeah.
Okay.
So that's how that was identified at the area structure plan phase, is that they wanted to have some community type space, so they decided, that they would do the trails, and so they built the trails initially, and then we maintain them, yeah, in perpetuity going forward.
Any other questions? No, we could use a motion.
I just want to say thanks, because I know this was a lot of work, you know, and it's one of those things that we need to get done, but they kind of go.
7 years in the making.
Thank you, Hillary.
Steve, or, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that county council approve policy number 179.
Any further discussion? Call for the question, those in favor? Those opposed, carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's move down to K, 2019 tax auction reserve bid and condition of sale.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Council.
We rarely see you here.
What's that?
We rarely ever see you.
No, I'm not around here much anymore. Okay, today I'm gonna present the agenda for the 2019 tax sale. Coming up in November 29th, I think it is, at 9 o'clock, our tax sale is scheduled. Right now, we have one property with outstanding arrears on there that's going up. It's roll number 2969, the northeast of 3821-4. We're proposing a reserve bid of $3.5 million. It's up to, council is required to approve this bid under the Municipal Government Act. With the 2019 tax sale, bid and conditions are as presented here. It's $3.5 million, and our terms are cash. Cash isn't necessarily bills and checks, it's just means that it's not subject to any conditions. We're not gonna accept 5% down. Yes.
So certified check would suffice.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Just as an aside, we've been in contact with this property owner.
Les, is there a way you can put the map up there? Yeah. Where it is, that'd be helpful.
It's, by
I need
the,
help, I'm a
just
visual
east of the
learner.
airport. Yeah.
We're special, we're today.
In northeast of 3821. So this is the parcel that we have up for sale. We have, there's outstanding amount of $6,231.20. So these have been outstanding since 2016. this is all part of the legislative process and tax recovery, so, I don't know if you have any questions or you want me to go through it again, or, but I would like to just make the recommendation that, council approves the reserve bid and the conditions for the 2019 tax sale.
So that's $21,000 an acre, almost $22,000 an acre.
Yes. Yeah. That's, yeah, it's pretty close to the,
Yeah, I know exactly.
or it may, or it's a,
Yeah. Wow,
it's a,
that's a lot.
That's what they're worth though.
Well, I could tell you the place straight north of that, right on the boundary of the city, the guys are asking 20,000 for it.
I just sure one went for 31,000.
and I think, and there's another, place just on the side of Pratt and Whitney that's for sale right now. It's,
That's right across the road.
Oh,
yeah, I know, and I had a listing on that I looked at, just kind of to bring in, 45, bring a thing there. It's all up there, but if you were to approach them and want to buy it for something,
No, no.
I don't know if you would get it for 3.5.
No, we don't wanna go there. Full conflict.
Well, that's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I don't mean us, but I mean like
No, I know.
some private guy.
So this is just plain agricultural land, the way it's gonna be sold then?
Yes.
that's what it's worth.
so just, so when you sell it now like that, does the pivot come with it? Or is that, how does that work?
I would think so, the irrigation district, because they have, their water rights and stuff, so they could fight that.
No,
I
I don't mean
guarantee
the
that
water
we would
rights.
get it, but
I
yeah.
don't mean the water rights, because, I hate to start on this road kind of, but there's a third party involved because the person who owns the land doesn't farm it. So the person who farms it put the pivot on it. So I'm just kinda wondering, are you gonna, how does that work? Like, would they get to take it off, or are you just selling the bare land, or how?
Yeah, there was no precedent set on that. If they can prove that they're the lawful owner of it, they would be entitled to take it off.
That's not worth 21,000.
Okay, I just was kinda curious how that works. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can only assume that the tax will be paid before this goes to auction, but how often have we had auctions? Like last year, there was 3 on there. Did they go to auction at all?
Yes, last year, the 3 parcels, we did have an auction. There was one parcel, the one in the hamlet of Shaughnessy, that was occupied. It, ended up getting cleared off, paid the taxes, and, it's off the tax notification list, back in the hands of the property owner. The other 2 parcels, that were basically on the other side of the river, we did take title to them. We've been in contact with the previous owners, lawyers and stuff like that, and it was all, they wanted us to basically take it, so we've taken it now. That's the only time we've taken property through tax auction, I can remember for the last 25 years.
I don't ever remember doing it, other than that.
That's right in the river, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so in 10 years, 15 years, we'll be able to work with the neighbors on dissolving the title.
No, there's the red tape.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that county council approves the reserve bid and conditions for the 2019 tax sale on the roll number.
Any discussion on that? Call for the question, those in favor, opposed, carried. Thanks, Les. Let's move down to the next one, and that's the shallow gas tax relief. That's probably yours too, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll be presenting this one, so. This one is a new one, so I'm not sure how much information you guys have on this initiative, or how much I should read or get into it.
I think Warren's fairly familiar because it's been brought up several times in various groups.
Well, it's been discussed at, Widows Little Bow, and it's also been discussed at RME a couple of times, so I don't know. But I was kind of under the impression from Tabor that we didn't already qualify. But do we qualify to join into this group?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this general report, it shows the wells that are affected and the amounts. This shell gas tax initiative was set up by the provincial government in September, offering relief to the shell gas wells and the gas and oil companies. The taxes were already assessed and set for 2019. So what they've done is they've identified these wells, granted them a 35% tax relief, and it's up to the municipality to send that out to them. So they've already been billed, but there's a further 35% reduction in the total tax bill on these properties that were identified. So the report includes the properties for the well and the pipeline, and what it is for a total on our part that we have to send out to. There's five oil companies affected. I do believe we're 5 or 6. And the total, what it amounted to was, the pipelines was $13,000 in taxes. The adjustment on that is $4,000, and then on the wells, there was a further adjustment of $7,000. So what we need a motion for is to write off this refund, and then we send it off to the province, and they will give that amount back to us off of our fourth quarter education requisition. So instead of mailing them off $1,010,000, we'll only have to give them $1 million.
That was my question.
Oh, okay. So it's only on the tax education portion, right?
No, it is on the tax and municipal portion, but how they're reimbursing us our municipal back is by not having to pay this education requisition, which is a total, this education tax requisition is separate from, but it's just the money that comes from the provincial government.
Okay.
But there is a education tax and municipal tax on these shallow gas wells. Right, and they've reduced the municipal portion as well as the education portion, and we're gonna get the municipal portion reimbursed back, because it was their initiative.
Tim?
Yeah, so that's gonna be continuous every year? Because
Ultimately, we will see it next year we'll have reduced linear assessment by this equivalent amount. So it won't be a tax, like a tax dollar figure, but instead of having 200 million of linear assessment for well and pipeline, we'll have 1,999,000 kind of deal. So we will see it throughout, but it will be just offset.
Any other questions? So that does nothing though for the people who haven't paid yet, right?
No, out of those oil companies that are up there, half of them I think have paid, the other half are still outstanding. So it'll just, the big one, CNRL, is, they're paid up to date, but some of the other ones, when that payment's forthcoming, not quite sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I guess we could use a motion to cover off. Ross?
I'll move the recommendation
those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thanks, Les.
Thanks.
Let's go down to county council dates.
Good morning. Good morning. As always, staff is kind of trying to prepare for 2020, and we were looking at the council meeting dates. And as you can see from the report, I'm sure you've read it thoroughly, and we're recommending that county council cancels the following meeting days: January 2nd, June 4th, and November 5th, and reschedules the following council meeting dates: January 16th to January 15th, and the February 6th to the February 7th dates. And these are being looked at for various conferences, workshops, etc., and we're trying to accommodate that so that we can give everybody some heads up for their schedule.
So I'm not sure why we're moving the January 2nd one. I mean, couldn't everybody come in a couple days ahead of time and get it ready for us?
We could, but because you're nice and you want us to enjoy our Christmas holiday, you don't really want us
Just kidding. I can imagine the length of that agenda.
to. It would be great.
Hello, goodbye.
But there might be donuts.
So we're moving it back.
No,
What's the question, sorry?
Scheduling the following council meeting dates, January 16th to January 15th.
That's the one to accommodate the Tiffin conference. Councilor
So,
Johnson.
before we do that one, should we see who's going to go to the Tiffin conference? Because if
I think that would be a good idea.
nobody's going,
Yeah.
it's a point changing it.
Do you want to show of hands who's planning on going to the Tiffin conference?
I would go if we don't have a council meeting.
But if we do, you won't go?
Well, it's kind of hard, right? Because I mean, it's the only meeting that we have. Sorry, it's the only meeting that we have in January, so it's kind of hard to miss that one then too.
Yeah.
So that's why,
Well, I guess
I would prefer to reschedule the date for January.
Does anybody have a conflict with moving it the next date? I guess we go, might as well go ahead and move it to the 15th. Any others problem? Okay, need a motion to do so.
I move. And move the January 16th to January 15th.
Actually, the recommendation reads as follows. County council cancels the following council meeting dates: January 2nd, 2020, June 4th, 2020, November 5th, 2020, and reschedules the following council meeting dates: January 16th to January 15th, and February 6th to February 7th.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
That was quick. Thanks.
Who's doing the Nobleford District Service Awards? Man, okay.
So an invitation was received for council to attend the Nobleford and District Emergency Services Awards event on Saturday, December 14th at 8 p.m. Lethbridge County will be presenting 4 firefighters with awards for their years of service to the citizens of the county. Previously, members of council have attended these types of awards events in the past. So the recommendation is that any member of council wishing to attend the Nobleford and District Emergency Services Service Awards event scheduled for December 14th, 2019 at the Nobleford Senior Center be authorized to do so.
Any discussion? Need the motion? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the recommendation that any member of council wishing to attend the Nobleford District Emergency Service Awards event scheduled for December 14th, 2019 at the Nobleford Senior Center be authorized to do so.
Any further discussion? Call the question, who's in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. So who's going to go?
It is my area, but I have a family function that night, so if somebody could go in my place, I would appreciate it.
Is there anyone else interested in going?
I looked at it, but I got the same thing, something on. Maybe the worst of it.
Well, pretty hard to.
Volunteer, like,
You can't talk about it.
You wanna be for it?
That's a Saturday night, right?
Yeah, that's
Well, I don't have anything down, so I guess if you can't find anybody else, somebody should go. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay, let's do Nico Yuko Japanese Gardens Winter Light Festival.
Okay, so an invitation was received for the REIT to attend the Nika Yuko Japanese Garden Winter Light Festival opening night on Friday, November 29th at 6 p.m. I know that, Rafiki, you are already attending the Edmonds Creek event. So therefore, the recommendation is that the REIT board as designate be authorized to attend the Nika Yuko Japanese Garden Winter Light Festival opening night on November 29th.
Lorraine, who's deputy read then?
Tori?
Steve.
Steve,
November
do you wanna go to that, or do you want somebody else to go?
Might still, it'll be still canon.
Or still, you wanna go?
It's still canon.
No, I'm going,
Oh, you're not here.
no, I don't know.
You're cross-border shopping.
That's true too, but the whole county wants 28, 29, and 30.
I know.
I don't know why that is.
Can you go see?
Yes, I think I can, yes.
Okay.
We need a motion actually to send somebody, I guess, that'd be helpful. Ross? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Maddie. Yep.
Run along with you one by one. We're still going.
Or two.
So side duties.
Okay, I guess we're down to N, and that's county council activities for the month of October. So on October the 3rd, we had a county council meeting.
Just one second. Lorraine, can we get this up? No. Oh. I cannot. Okay. Sorry, Carrie. Sorry.
Okay, county council meeting, and we also met with the Minister of Ag and the Economic Development Minister. On the 4th, there was a mayors and Reefs meeting. On the 9th, I met with Ann for the day, or for the lunchtime rather. On the 16th, the evaluation meeting for the CAO. And also I met with Ann again for a weekly meeting. October the 17th, county council meeting. October 22nd, I met with Ann and the city manager and the mayor. And that was in regards to, well, a lot of different things. Yeah, just general, how we're getting along with ICFs and moving forward, what are we gonna do to get to the date of April 1st. And the 23rd, county road tour. The 30th, again, meeting with Ann, and 31st, we had the meeting with the town of Fullerton. That would be my report. Ken, you're up next. Where am I? Right there.
October the 3rd, county council meeting. 16th was a CAO evaluation meeting. 17th was county council and organizational meeting. The 18th was Alberta Sugar Beet Growers Tour. Was a short one because they had problems in the factory. 21st to the 22nd, ag services up in Drumheller, which is a long ways away. And then the county road tour on the 23rd, and the 31st is town of Fullerton meeting.
Any questions? Tori?
October 3rd, county council meeting. Following the meeting, we went over to the exhibition grounds for the meeting with the Ag Minister and Economic Development Minister put on by the Chamber. The 9th, I had a Link Pathway Committee meeting. That was our first meeting in some time. It's kind of, I guess things are still happening there. It's just kind of slow. Some of the grants that were applied for, the Pathway Committee was unable to secure. There's ongoing discussions with a couple of landowners. For the most part, the route has been secured. The engineering firm that's working with the committee has flown the entire pathway or potential pathway with the drone, and through that mapping and some other mapping, they've been able to render a 3D image of what the pathway is going to look like, and it looks really good. It's really encouraging. Like I say, it's just kind of slower going right now, but they are making progress. 16th, CAO evaluation. 17th, county council and work meeting. 23rd, county road tour. 25th, the St. Joe's School Playground opening in Coldell. Through our community grant fund, we supplied some funding towards that, so they recognized all the people that were a part of that morning. October 31st, we had a meeting with the town of Colhurst.
So Troy, just a quick question on the pathway. How are they making out with the CPR? Or are they able to get any headway there, or?
I believe that's still at standstill.
Oh, okay.
The primary focus at this point has been with transportation on the crossing on the 512. That's kind of where I think efforts are being focused right now. And then trying to determine, there's one landowner to the east of the exhibition grounds in there, and it's working with that landowner, CPR, and the city to see how that's all going to come together. I think that's kind of where that sits right now. It's just all in the negotiation process. Like I said, some land there has recently changed hands, and that's complicated things a little bit, but they're working at that.
Okay, thank you. Steve? Oh, sorry.
How confident are they that they will get grant funding? Because I know, with the government and their new budget, there seems to be a lot of challenges with grant funding. So what's the committee's thoughts on grant funding, and do they have an alternative if the grant funding isn't forthcoming?
Yeah, I think the focus might have shifted slightly away from, I think initially there was an anticipation that they might be able to secure some substantial grant funding. I think as that's become maybe I think the committee would be less hopeful of that at this point in time. So it's definitely trying to ramp up. I just received an email actually, as we're sitting here, we're pending charitable status. So that's one step forward, trying to be able to raise our own funds, going online with the donations, kind of tying that all together with the accounting and stuff like that, just trying to, so we can start pounding doors and actually have somewhere for that money to go. Part of the grant funding is that they want to see that we have the ability to raise funds that we can match. So that was, we were kind of at a disadvantage previously because we didn't have those funds. So the hope is that once we're able to raise funds, that then we'll be looked upon more favorably in the grant process. But I think some of the grants that were applied for, maybe it wasn't extremely, I guess maybe there's some false hope. I don't know if we really stood a good chance at securing the bulk of that funding. So I think it's been some of that coming back to reality and refocusing. At this point, yeah, possibly, I think. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think very cognizant of the fact that we're not gonna get it done that way. So what's the path forward then if we can't?
Charitable status.
Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dory, so what amounts do you have right now that were donated by charitable money?
I shouldn't say off the top of my head. I know that when applying for this grant funding, they're able to take in kind. They'll recognize that as your portion. So once you take in the work that the architect has done, the engineering firm, MPE is billing the pathway, but at a very substantially reduced rate, basically cost recovery. So when you start to factor in those things, I know it's substantial. It's over $1 million just in kind. But as far as actual cash, I shouldn't say off the top of my head.
So, what happens to the money that we gave them if they can't get any matching funds?
Larry, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you remember if there were any parameters around the $150,000 that we gave to the Link Pathway?
The only condition, as I recall, Mr. Chairman, Council, was that the county granting the funds to the Pathway Committee was conditional on them receiving a government grant.
Yeah.
I think it was singular and, versus plural, just a grant, didn't specify, wasn't really particular about what grant. And at that time, they did have assurance that they received a grant from the province, and hence council went forward and provided them with the funds. I don't recall the amount at this point. 150, yes. Yeah, that sounds right. Thank you.
That was discussed at the last meeting, what that contribution from the county, what that was contingent upon. But as Larry just spoke to, there was the Pathway has been successful in securing a couple of grants, just not the larger grants that they had hoped for. So that was kind of our interpretation at the time.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. October 3rd had county council meeting. Following that was the presentation from the Ag Minister and Economic Development Minister. October 4th had an Expedition Park Board meeting. 16th, the CAO evaluation. 17th was county council meeting and the organizational meeting. 19th, the Corban Ray case competition, which was a good event to attend. The winners of the case competition were some local ones from both the university and the college from Lethbridge. It would have been nice if they would have just taken a few minutes, kind of go through the top three and just explain a little bit what their proposal was, but considering we didn't sit with any of the, we sat with a couple of volunteers, not the ones that were involved with the case, so didn't learn too much that way. October 21st and 22nd attended the Ag Service Board South Region Conference in Drumheller. County Road Tour on the 23rd. 28th had an Expedition Park Committee meeting, and the 31st had the meeting with the town of Coolers.
Any questions? Bob?
Thank you. October 3rd, County Council meeting, the 9th, the Chamber of Commerce meeting, 10th, Highway 320 Development Association meeting, October 11th, the Cortec Barbecue at the Pitcher Butte, and then October 16th, CO evaluation, and then the 17th, County Council and Organizational meeting, 18th, Sugar Beet Course Tour, 21st and 22nd, ASB South Region Conference in Drumheller, 23rd, County Road Tour, and the 31st, Town of Cold Horse meeting, and I did go to the Corvette Ray thing, and it was about, they wanted to know if they could do, natural raising pigs, organic to non-organic. And that's what it was all about. Thank you.
Any questions for Bob? Ken Morris is not here.
Can I ask a quick question?
You bet.
Highway 320, is it now taken over from, is it Southborough that's overseeing it?
Yes,
Okay,
and they've hired a consultant at Victoria and Chester.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, division now.
so then do they still meet once in a while or not very
They meet
often?
once a month still, right, Ken? You're in it now, they didn't.
Not November, but in December, I think is.
They usually do once a month for an hour, but it's really, I don't know.
So I don't understand what you mean when they turned it over to Southborough. Southborough is the manager of it now then, or?
Yeah, they oversee it, they took all the money in and they run everything, and they hired a consultant. I think her wage is $47 a year.
That's fine. Okay, Claus?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. October 3rd, we had a council meeting. October 3rd in the afternoon, we had a meeting with the Ag Minister and the Economic Development Minister. October 16th was CEO evaluation. Also the 16th in the evening, Picture Butte Emergency Award Ceremony. And Morris and I gave out an award there to one of the firefighters. The October 17th was organizational meeting. October 23rd was the county road tour. And the 25th was the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association. And tomorrow we have another meeting and probably close to hearing what the final site is, where it's going to be. And then October 31st we had a meeting with the town of Colhurst. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, I guess we can have a motion to accept these reports. Further discussion? Call for the question, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Oh, yeah, yes, so we can go into a break if you want, because we're done other than our in-camera.